Peace everyone, Unmask here. Welcome back to the color pencil tutorial. My apologies for being a couple minutes late. I had to wait for my memory card to transfer data. It was patient inducing for sure. Anyways, hello Barbara, Susan, Claire, Diane, Sherry. Good to see all of you. Today we're going to be focusing on the rims of the car, which two of the more difficult parts of this drawing, as the shapes are very abstract, but I promise you it's not actually as difficult as you think it may be. I have one additional color to the palette. This is the 1063. And I don't know if we'll get to using that, but we might. I'm going to use the 1070. And the process that I'm going to use is essentially just breaking up sort of the larger shapes that I can from the rims. So in particular, excuse me, this back one here, you can kind of create this little triangle piece, and I'm going to use the 1070 to create that triangle piece right here. And one of the features of this triangle piece is that it doesn't have any pure white. So I'm just going to fill this in generously with this color here. Hello, Nicoletta. Welcome. All right, so that is going to be the first step. Just coloring that in nicely. Now the next step is going to be to add these smaller, intricate, darker shapes within that broad shape. So I'm just going to use the black pencil. And there's a little tiny triangle up here. And then you can see the rim curve a little bit here. It's just like a subtle line. And then you'll notice there's sort of three rectangles, really teeny tiny little rectangles. So I'm just going to create small little rectangles right there beside that line. And then when you get up to the top, the rectangle shape deviates and sort of has this little flare to it. So nothing really complex. And then a little bit of a line right through here for another crease of the metal. So very simple, just that small little section. I don't think anybody will struggle with that. And then I'm going to take white, and I'm going to use the white to smooth out that light gray. That'll make it appear a little bit more shiny. So something like that. Good to see you again, Ozzy. All right, so the next shape that I want to tackle is the bottom triangle. If you notice, the bottom, sort of just the mirror of this one, most of the rim is actually just pure white. So what I'm going to do is ignore the pure white parts. I'm going to use the 1070 once again, and I'm just going to focus on the very few shapes that are colored in, which is this sort of rectangular shape that curves with the wheel, sort of here and here. Very small rectangles. See how I added those two rectangles? That's it. And then there's one little triangle down at the bottom right here that curves around the rim, something like this. Not complex at all. And then we have this line. This is one of the spokes here that you can barely see. And then you have the cap, the wheel cap that covers the single bolt that holds the tire to the car. It's this little like flap that comes out. Right beneath that flap, there's another little crease in the rim that you can kind of see. So I'm just going to draw a really thin line right there, separating those two little areas. And I'm going to use white in the white part of the rim in order to preserve the paper there. Just keep it protected. And then for the darker colors, I'll just use the black. So the black, this top part of this rectangle is darker here. It's not totally black, but it is darker. So I'm just going to lightly layer the black in here. Most of what we will do today on the rims is small little things, small things like that. It doesn't take a lot of effort to fill in those shapes. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is the wheel cap, this little thing with the wings that come off of it. You can see the shape of it here better than you can back there, but I'm going to use the 1070 once again. And working on that shape, I'm just going to color around the pure white spots. So we have this one highlight up here at the top, that's pure white. And then the one wing that comes up, the right side of that is pure white. So I'm just going to do the left outline of it. And then underneath of it, and I'll just bring this all the way over to the other side, just with this curved line here. And I'm just going to fill everything else in. Just like that. And then once again, I will use the black to create the darker shapes. And this approach, cutting out a shape, working a small shape, it's like coloring the grid method, because in the grid method when drawing, you just work one square at a time. Well, you can do that sort of the same strategy when it comes to coloring. When you have really complex objects such as these rims here, just break it up into really small digestible pieces, and coloring it will become remarkably easy beyond that point. All right, I'm going to use a little bit of 1067, this darker gray, for the bottom part here, since it's not quite black. And I'll use the white to smooth it out. And of course, I'll apply a little bit of white where I left the paper blank. Alrighty. Alright, the next part is a little trickier because you can't quite break up all of those details. So just do it sort of one tiny detail at a time. So for instance, this top part here, this top spoke, is pure white. I'm using the 1067, by the way. So I'm just going to create that pure white spoke, just like this. So there's the pure white spoke, that one little line. There's another one right beside it, so I'll just add that. And then there's one that comes straight out, so I'll just add that one. Sort of like that there. You have another pure white spoke right here that is angled down. So once again, just sort of add that spoke. And then you have this sort of very abstract shape where it's white. So I'll just sort of broadly put that in. I'll make it a little bit bigger than what it should be. And then I can just use my other colors to shrink it as I need. So something like that. And any of the other bright spots, I will simply work around them. When it comes to the highlights, I just recommend making the highlights, as a general rule, I always say make your highlights bigger than what you know they are, because shrinking highlights is very easy. You simply just cover them up. But trying to make a highlight bigger with colored pencils is not so easy. So I just recommend making them bigger than you need to. That way you don't have to try to cover up darker colors with white or something along those lines. My apologies if I happen to miss any questions that someone mentioned. What sharpener am I using to get these points? I am using an electric sharpener. The brand is Jaguar. And I'm going to use switching colors to the 1070 for the gray areas here, still leaving the pure white spots alone. Now that my color's all on, I'm going to smooth it out a little bit using my solvent and paintbrush. Just need a very, very small amount of solvent for this. There we go. So there is the first rim. Forgot to do this one here. There we go. I think it looks pretty close to the reference. Looks shiny. So now on to the real challenge, which is the rim that you can actually see. But this one also quite easy to break it up into its easier parts. So again, I'm going to start with the 1070. I'm going to start with the outer part of the rim. And the 1070 is not as dark as the gray needs to be, but it's a safe color because it's you can lighten it and you can darken it as you need. So I'm going to actually sort of treat this ellipse here in two sections. I'm going to do the top part and then I'll do the bottom part. I'm just going to kind of stop it arbitrarily in the center here. So this first lip where the line art is, I'm just going to color the whole thing. So very easy. There's no pure white here, so there's nothing to dodge with this color. You want to get a nice solid cover with this first layer. And now I'm going to use the darker gray, the 1067. And this gray is going to leave a lighter gray lip on the outside and on the inside. So think of like a line down the middle, sort of like this, but you widen that so that you just get a small lip on both sides of that lighter gray. Oh, hey there, Chandra. Good to see you. You don't have to go too heavy with this color because it's a little darker than what I need. I'm going to go right back over it with the 1070. This will smooth that darker gray out while also lightening it a little bit. All right, so there's that first section of the rim. Now, the next few parts are a bit tricky. Still just going to sort of cut right across here. So it's just treating that top part. And I'm going to take the 1067 and I have some of the line art for the dark spots on this part of the rim. So I'm going to put that in first, because if I cover it with the light gray, I will lose my line art. So just do this so I don't lose that line art there. And then there's these little shapes, these little rectangle shapes here. And these rectangles, they turn into triangles right here. As the perspective of the wheel changes, those shapes change. Sort of like this. So you get that sort of tapered shape. And now that those areas are protected, I'm just going to take the 1070 and fill the rest of the rim in. All the way up to the spokes here. Again, there's no pure white spots, so I don't have to dodge anything with this color. Again, make sure you're covering the paper. Get that full coverage you want. You want the surface to be super smooth. That's what's going to make it look like metal. Yeah, there should be a moderator that is Diane here? Diane's here, isn't she? I mean, anybody that knows how to spell Jaguar, can you put the name of that sharpener in the chat? To be honest with you, I've only owned this one electric sharpener. I always make sure I mention this anytime somebody asks me about my pencil sharpener. I don't know if there's anything special about my sharpener. It's just the only one that I've ever used, and it works really well. But thank you, Diane. But as far as I've heard, you can only get it from the UK. It only comes with a UK plug, and I don't know if it's worth the hassle for some of you. Just a fair warning. Okie dokie, that top part is looking good. I'm going to take the white to smooth this out a little bit. And then I'm going to take some black and sharpen up the edges of the dark shapes just a little bit. And I use the dark gray, the 1065, to put in some of the changes in the value here. So these rings come around the rim, create some unique creases in the metal. So just add these. Okay. Now it's time to move on towards the bottom. Now this is where it gets a little bit trickier because there's the white shapes that you have to dodge. So I'm going to use the 1070 once more. And you have to work around all the white shapes. So you want to make sure you get those shapes isolated. So this is one isolated shape until it gets to right here on the rim. Everything up this line is colored gray, yes. So this whole side here is safe to fill in. Up until this edge, that edge is white. So this whole part here is totally gray. And then you have the part that's right behind it. So this shape here, that's a pure white shape. So I'm going to follow the outside edge of that. And then I'll just come up there. This shape here is also white. So I'll dodge that. So there is one fairly large shape, and you only have to worry about what's down here. Now I'm going to wrap this around the rest of the rim here. So this edge here is pure white, and then the edge on the inside is also pure white. So it's sort of the opposite here. Like we use the darker gray to create the two lips on either side. Well, on this one, those two lips are pure white. And this part here, this part of the rim also comes up through here. There's a gap between this line and the spokes that is pure white, and there's a gap also on the left side, or the outside of the wheel, that is pure white. The line art does reflect those pure white shapes. So if you got the line art laid down really accurately, you shouldn't have any issues there. All right. Now the space in between, I guess I'll can fill this in. The gap in between, it sort of comes down through here, creates this little circular shape down at the bottom. And now I'll just isolate those two white shapes. Just like that. Now I'm going to use the 1065, create the darker shade of gray that's on this part of the rim. Same thing on the inside. Do the same thing, continuing on this side here. It gets lighter down towards the bottom, so I'll sort of taper this gray. And there's a slightly darker tone of the gray, so I'll use the 1067 for that. Right here in the middle, this part is a little bit darker. And then just like over here, you have these rectangular shapes. So time to put those in. Again, make sure you follow the contour of the rims. I'm going to use the 1070 to continue smoothing this a little bit. Some more of the 1065. One of the things that's going to help your rims look nice and round, these elliptical lines that encompass the shape of the rim, you want to make sure that your ellipses are nice and smooth. It will take a little finessing to do, but it's the only way. So you just want to try to make sure that you get those lines as smooth as you can. Easier said than done, but you take your time, you can do it. I'm going to use a 1067 to darken up this over here a little bit more. going to take my brush. I didn't even dip it in any solvent. I'm just using it, whatever's left on it, to help me smooth the rim out. It doesn't actually take very much solvent to blend colored pencils. If you just keep rubbing the brush on the paper, it will eventually start moving the pigment around. It actually gives you more control if you have less solvent on the brush, because it will move the pigment a lot slower. Same thing like the other rim, getting these colors as smooth as you possibly can is going to give you a much more metal-like effect. This is probably the most difficult part of this project, so it's certainly worth spending a very considerable amount of time on. Good morning, Alicia. Good to see you again. All right, let's try to smooth some things out with the white. Cover up these bright highlights. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now for, let's see. I'm going to focus on the base of these spokes up front. I'm going to use the 1065. I have to extend these spokes down and apply the gray. So this will only take a moment to do. Probably could have just did this with the black last week, but I wanted to try to get, there's like that little lip right behind the spokes, if you can see it, and it's not black, it's an obvious gray, so I figured I'd try to get that level of accuracy, but it's so tiny that you almost can't see it. Oh, you're welcome, Alicia. Now, most of these spokes are actually the light gray color. They are not all just pure white, so I have to take that into account with some of them, while also protecting the ones that are indeed pure white. A little bit of fine tuning of the shapes. All right, let's go ahead and do the center cap. I'm going to sharpen my pencil. This one got a little dull, so give me a couple seconds, please. Thank you, Grammar. Appreciate that. All right, 1070. Same strategy. Just color everything in on this shape with the exception of the pure white highlights. So I got a little pure white highlight over here on this part. So I will avoid that. And then the pure white highlight on top, sort of this rim here, the line art follows that. And then you have the black shape right next to it. So I'll color that in. Now that will become black once I use the black pencil, but for now, just using this one. Over on that side a little bit. And then you have the top little wing area. And it has a pure white highlight on the edge of the right side, but the top side is all gray, so I'll just color that in, just like this. You have the side over here that is all gray. All right, I'm actually going to use the black really quick just to help me save some of these shapes before I lose them. So this shape here is that first pure black one. And then you get a little diamond shape right here. That diamond shape goes in the curvature of the edges, so you want to try to use the shape of those shadows, those dark colors, to your advantage. Help you create that that illusion that the object is curved there. has like that curved edge. This outer edge has the black shadow as well, all the way up to the top with a gap for that pure white highlight. So something like that. And that's about all the black except for down here. There's a little bit of black right there. And I'm going to use the darker gray really quick. This is the 1067. This top part, you'll notice that has some engravings like the words and whatever. Ignore that. I'm going to just use this to color in the darker top section. Right there, and then the top side of the bottom wing is also darker gray. I'm not going full dark because this one gets pretty dark. I'll use some of the 1065 to apply more layers without going too dark. And now I'll switch back to the 1070 to just cover everything once more, with the exception of the black. Get a really nice heavy layer applied to everything. Grab my paintbrush, smooth it out. Now when you blend with solvent, you have to make sure you let it dry before you start applying more pencil on top of it. That's very important, so don't overlook that. All right, this area over here is still safe to work on. So what I'll do, the center hub of the rim is behind the spokes. This is why I left so much of that blank when I was filling it in. So I'm going to fill the gaps in between the spokes with the 1070. I'm not even going to pretend like I didn't lose my spot among some of the details there. But fortunately, when I zoom out, you guys won't be able to tell, and nobody else will either. When they look at it, they won't be able to tell that something is off with the spokes. There's just too much going on. It's just too small to get all of those details. All right, switching to the 1067, I'm going to do some of these dark shapes. There's like almost like a chain-like pattern here. So these small dashed lines going around here, sort of like that. can barely see it, but try to get as much detail as you can. Using the 1070 to smooth some of this color out. All right, I'm going to grab black. I want to try to fine tune all of the spokes. It's a bit of a nightmare, but I want to try to make them more even. Trying to get those details as clean and as sharp as I can before I start coloring any of the spokes. Yes, Susan, this is quite tricky. It's having your line art really precise is really what's going to make this process the easiest it can be. And then just taking it one tiny detail at a time. Right now I'm just jumping all over to address the thickness of a lot of my spokes there. But as you can see, the ones that aren't colored in, they're just white paper. It doesn't look too bad to have the white paper for the spokes, but that's not the way they should be. Alrighty, I think that's good. Now I'm just going to go through, let's see here. Most of the spokes on the top here are pure white. This spoke is not. I'm using the 1070, by the way. This spoke is not. This spoke is not. So I'm just going through spoke by spoke and changing some of them from being pure white to not being pure white. You'll also notice that some of the spokes, they go from a gray to a pure white, as only parts of them are in shadow. Your precision here, don't stress. Trust me, don't stress. Your precision here is not super vital. Because like I said, it already looks quite good with all the spokes being pure white. By changing some of them to gray, you're just going to create a little bit of variety in how distant the spokes look, and sort of some of them being in shadow, some of them not being in shadow. It will give the wheel a little bit more of a sparkle by having only spots of the spokes being pure white. If anyone has any questions, more than happy to take on some questions, by the way. All right, I think that is good. So let me zoom out. I'll move the project a bit. So there we go. I think those are some pretty good looking rims when you look at it from a normal. Well, this is actually still zoomed in. If I zoom out to like a normal viewing angle, pretty good looking rims, I think. So the car is starting to come to life a little bit. That's going to be it for today, because I know that a lot of you that are following this project, you're going to want to spend plenty of time working on the rims. It's going to just test your patience a little bit, but you break it up into those little sections the way I described, and you'll find that it's not as hard as you may imagine it to be. What we're going to do tomorrow, if you didn't notice, I never did use that 1063 color, the new color that I added. This is the base foundation for the paint. And I thought that I'd be able to get to it today. I wasn't exactly sure how long the rims were going to take, since they're kind of small, but small things can take a long time to color. But yeah, this is going to be the foundation for the paint. So if you wanted to get started on it, I suppose you could, but you don't have to. These areas here, this color is these areas, and top area, and some of the side stuff as well. But anyways, that's going to do it for today. I'll be back tomorrow, same time. I appreciate you all coming by and hanging out. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had fun, and hope you learned something. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Peace.